The man in the suit stood beneath a sycamore at the rim of the ravine locals called Crow's Hollow. 30 yards below him, Deputy Wade Harper tipped back in the driver's seat of a county cruiser with his newspaper folded over his belly and a thermos tucked between his knees. The man in the suit lifted one finger. Wade yawned so wide, he looked like a cat trying to swallow a peach. The man lifted a second finger. The deputy blinked slow. Heavy. The paper sliding to the floorboard. A third finger. The thermos rolled off his lap with a dull clunk. Unopened. And Wade's chin slumped to his chest. A soft, unapologetic snore rose up through the trees. The man let his hand fall. He hated to rush a thing as delicate as sleep. But hot coffee on a patrol car carpet would bring questions he did not care to answer. He moved from the tree line with the careful silence of a young deer that has learned there are worse things than hunters. Old cabins sat like dark teeth along the hollow floor. Windows painted over with dust. Doors braced with new padlocks purchased on taxpayer money. The sheriff had ordered everything sealed after the funeral. After the last grown-up who loved that place went into the ground. He did not bother with the locks. Crowbars and cutters draw attention. Locks are for honest people. He laid his palm on each hasp and turned until stubborn metal remembered it was only metal. The shacks gave up their secrets willingly and had nothing to give. Canned peaches past date. 2 quilts rolled tight and gone to mildew. A broom with a handle whittled thinner by a small hand. He reached the tidy cabin that had belonged to Mirelda Vance. Known to every child as Granny Mirelda. Its door looked whole, but when he pressed, the wood crumbled under his fingers as if rot had chewed it for months, while the frame stood strong and square. He stepped into a room that still smelled faintly of cedar and boiled coffee. Shelves lined with jars of dried beans, bundled herbs, and stacks of hymnals. He dropped them all to the floor, sifted through the baskets, tapped the floorboards for hollows, and came up with nothing but grit under his nails. The book was gone. One of the sheriff's junior men had a cousin who used to run around with one of the older kids from the hollow. And gossip, like creek water, always finds a low place. He had heard there was a big book, bound in white leather, that Granny kept shut with a knob lock and a strip of belt leather. He had also heard 3 of the older ones had grabbed a sack of canned goods and whatever that book was and slipped out through the woods the morning after the burial. If it was the book he thought it was, that was a problem. He touched the empty shelf where a long rectangle of dust told him a heavy thing had rested for a long time. Somewhere a whip-poor-will sang. He pictured a boy with a mind like a blade asking where he came from. He pictured a girl who had learned too early to keep moving and keep secrets. He pictured a smaller figure in the dark, the kind you only noticed when you looked up and saw eyes where no eyes should be. He sighed, a sound with more patience than frustration, and slipped back into the tree-line. He snapped his fingers once. In the cruiser below, Wade jerked awake, blinked at the thermos on the floorboard, and muttered, "Thank God." The new sheriff would have tanned his hide if coffee had bled into the carpet of county property. Wade never lifted his gaze to the ridge, never saw the stranger straighten his tie and check the weight of the watch in his pocket. There were creeks to cross and bridges to burn. There always were. If the children had the book, there was no time to lose. Part 1. Noah Calder had been told he came to Crow's Hollow as a baby in a cardboard box with a wool blanket and a thumb-worn photograph tucked under his head. He did not remember the box. He remembered hands that smelled like lavender and bacon grease lifting him into daylight. He remembered the rhythm of a rocker on a pine floor, him-sung hum, and the soft smack of cornbread cooling in a cast-iron pan. He remembered being a toddler splashing in the creek with Miss Laurel and the other small ones. He remembered, in the next blink, sweeping a kitchen with Miss June and being told he was old enough to do it right. He remembered a Bible, then letters that turned into words that had never seemed strange or hard. Somewhere in between there should have been lessons. He could not find them. Granny Mirelda used to say children grow inside time like beans in a jar. Sometimes a sprout finds a crack of light and leaps while you are looking the other way. That was cozy talk said over a pot of soup on a late winter evening. It did not explain why Noah never remembered learning anything. Things arrived inside him fully formed, like birds dropping out of the blue. He had no last name until someone told him Calder. And that was fine enough. though it never sat on him like something he owned. You could tell the children who had been dropped off with nothing. Some took the last name of the family that raised them after they left the hollow. Some took none at all. Some changed names as often as the wind switched. Lark Navarro changed hers as easy as turning a page. She claimed Fairchild 1 month because she liked the way it sounded in her mouth. The next month, she said Harlow, because she had seen a magazine and liked the way a movie star wore her hair. She told Noah once that their true names were locked behind their ribs where breath could not reach them, and the right hour would pry them loose. She said it like someone reciting a creed she never believed in. Pip Merriweather was mostly silence threaded around a small body with quick hands and a stare that made a person forget how to swallow. The other kids gossiped about finding him in trees at night. Eddie Fielder told anyone who would listen that when he was out at Mason's Rock with Joanne Hale late one evening, they felt eyes on them. They looked all around and found no one. Then Joanne looked up. Pip was perched in a hickory like a night bird, hair hanging over his brow, those big black eyes drinking them in. Eddie threw a rock, because boys like Eddie throw rocks when they are afraid. And Pip vanished up the trunk and into the dark like smoke curling from a candle snuffed by a breath. The morning after Granny was lowered into the ground. County cars lined the old road, and men with clipboards took notes like they could turn a life into a list. The sheriff had the hollow fenced and locked by evening, which meant it was already too late to keep anything safe. Lark had been waiting for that. She knew the sound of a county truck from a mile off. She knew how long it took men who wore ties to find their way down the hill. She had her pack ready before they finished the prayer over Mirelda's grave. They took what they could carry from the stash under the rock ledge by the corn patch. Canned beans, sardines, crackers, jars of pickled beets Noah would not admit he liked, and the big white book from Granny's shelf. They slipped out through the woods with the last light leaking away and made for the hills above the hollow where scrub pine and sandstone ledges made a quilt of shadow. By the time they reached the little cave above the dry wash, twilight had thickened to a summer dark that hummed with insects. Lark struck the small lantern she kept hidden in a tin, and that brave circle of light made the cave a room. It was nothing but a crease in the rock, but it kept rain off and eyes out. They spread a blanket on the stone and divided food with the stubborn fairness of children who know exactly how much each person can carry and how much each person needs. Noah set the book in the lantern's glow. White leather cover, a gold cross embossed on the front, filigree edging like vines. Once crisp, now rubbed thin by decades of hands. A strap of old belt leather with a turn knob that refused him. He had tried to coax it loose all afternoon without carving it off. It was the kind of lock people who loved books chose. You had to want the contents. You had to prove it. Not with a key, but with patience. Lark put out a finger and grinned at him. She had not meant to do what she had done earlier that day to Granny's cabin door. She had brushed the wood with her fingertips to feel grain and found rot instead. It had come apart under her hand like paper left under a drip. Noah had grabbed her wrist, then like he grabbed it now. "Please do not," he said. "Whatever you did downstairs was not careful. This lock needs careful." Pip watched them from the far edge of the blanket, eyes glossy in the lantern light. He reached for the book with a suddenness that made Lark flinch, and Noah put his palm flat on the cover. Pip stood with it at arm's length like it was a fish he did not trust. His mouth worked. He swallowed his words. Tears shone. He said, as if confessing to the cave, "I do not want to open it." "We have to," Noah said, keeping his voice low. "I need to know what she wrote down about us. About me. Maybe your name is in there. Maybe mine is. If not, maybe where to find it is. I am tired of stories that start with once upon a time in a cardboard box." Pip shook his head so hard his hair scattered its own shadow. He squeezed his eyes shut. When he opened them, something in his face had changed like a wind had shifted. The turn knob clicked on its own. The leather strap went slack. The cover went from white to a deep, scorched brown as if heat moved through it from the inside. The gold cross dissolved. Pip dropped the book with a hiss, and it fell open on the rock. Words slid on the pages. King James chapters turning into maps. Marginalia. And drawings so old the ink had threaded itself into the fibers. Envelopes puffed out between sections. names written across them in a dozen hands and inks. Some crossed through with soot-dark lines. Some slashed with red that made Noah's chest ache. On one spread, an old truss bridge was sketched with a precision that made it more true than a photograph. Above it, someone had written, in a neat hand, Eleanor Bridge. The opposite page showed a figure like a person with too many arms. You could not count them all if you tried. Each arm ending in a different hand. One held a clay jar. One held a mouth. One held an eye. Lark's breath hitched. She kept everything. Noah traced Eleanor Bridge with his finger. Beneath the drawing there were directions written from the hollow in the staccato voice that had read bedtime stories and dosed fevers. This was Granny's hand. When the creek runs low enough to show the stump of the sycamore. Cross below the slab where the water turns green. Follow the old path along the ridge until the hawks rise. You will hear the road before you see it. Noah lifted one of the envelopes with his name on it and slid out a photograph. A brick storefront with a boarded window. The words Merit Pharmacy lettered above the door. On the back, in the slanted writing of a woman. Call this number. The rest had smudged into a bruise. The photograph smelled faintly of mint. Lark opened an envelope with her own chosen name written across it. Inside she found a crayon drawing. Childish and sure. Of a woman with a halo of hair made of little lines and a church on fire behind her. On the bottom corner, in a cramped script, remember. Lark shut the envelope soft and set it aside like a glass thing. Pip did not pick up any envelope. He still stared at the book like it was an animal crouched to spring. See that? Lark whispered, pointing to a small block of text in a different hand beneath the drawn bridge. It did not look like Granny's careful print. It looked like someone writing while walking. Jagged and impatient. Keys are born, not made. Some are stolen. Some come back. Keys to what? Noah asked. To doors you cannot see. Lark said. To rooms you should not want. Noah sat back. In the lantern light, the book looked older than anything in that cave. Older than the cave itself. As if time had been around it the way heat bends around a stove. He imagined Mirelda turning a page with those patient fingers. He imagined her writing in this same careful cave darkness. He imagined her thinking she would have enough days left to tell him all that mattered. And then time, for her, had said no. We should go to the bridge. Noah said. Tomorrow before the heat gets mean. The sheriff's men think we are still in the hollow. Or that we will sneak back tonight. If we leave now, we can walk by dawn. The directions are clear. Pip shook his head again, though his eyes had softened to something like fear's cousin. Sorrow. Lark looked from Noah to the book and back. We go, she said, and her voice had that hard edge it got when she cut loose from a name. If there are answers, I am not letting men in ties hand them to me. Part 2. They left the cave before true morning, while the stars were still hanging on. The summer air clung to their skin, sweet with honeysuckle and something else the hollow kept for itself. They moved quiet. Pip led the way along deer paths worn into the scrub grass. He went as if he had walked the route 3 times in his sleep. Lark walked behind him with the lantern cold and packed, one hand on the strap of her bag, the other skimming low brush and rock, learning texture without breaking it. Noah came last with the book wrapped in a blanket against his chest. It felt heavier than it had hours earlier, and there was a heat coming off it that was not weather. He did not name that heat. They reached the bend in the creek where the water ran thin and green over the bedrock and saw the rotted nub of a sycamore stump like a tooth. The bridge did not appear at once. They walked the ridge until hawks rose on the warm air. And then the sound of the road below grew out of the woods in a steady hum. They looked down at a truss bridge from before any of them were born. Steel bones and concrete. Graffiti scabbed along the railings in layers of paint. Shale bluffs rose on either side like scars. The river ran low. The rocks along the banks slick as old bones. Noah set the book on the guardrail. Lark stood lookout. Pip crouched near the abutment in the shadow where the concrete met rock. He put his ear close to the stone like he could hear a voice through it. The morning light brushed the far bluffs the color of wet clay. A truck rolled past, and the driver did not look at them. That seemed like a blessing. Noah opened the book to the drawn bridge. The lines on the page seemed to shimmer a little. That could have been his imagination. That could have been heat. Beneath the bridge in the drawing, something had been sketched over and erased so many times the paper had gone soft. His fingers found an indentation like a map inside a map. He traced it. He felt a circle of stone in the real world under the bridge answer his touch with a small, greedy ache. "Here," he said. Pip nodded and slid under the rail. He moved over the concrete like water moves over rock. Without friction, he placed his palms on a circle set in the abutment the size of a dinner plate. He flinched and hissed when it burned him. He did not pull away. The circle turned. There was a sound like old breath leaving a room. Lark crouched beside Noah. "Your hands are shaking." "I am human," Noah said. "That is not all you are?" she said, not unkindly. He wanted to ask what she thought he was. He wanted to ask what she thought she was. He did not. Pip made a small sound. The circle popped free and rolled into his hands. It was not stone at all, but a disc of some clay-like material hard as bone and carved with lines that made sense to Noah's fingers, if not his eyes. Behind the disc, the abutment was hollow. Inside was a tin wrapped in oilcloth, a small wooden box, and a mason jar with something inside that looked like a tooth. Lark took the jar and held it up to the light. "That is no deer," she said. Pip laid the tin and box on the concrete and opened the tin with the reverence of a boy on Christmas. Inside lay papers sealed in wax and a small photograph. 4 people stood on the stairs of an old schoolhouse. 3 adults and a child with eyes like a new moon. Noah recognized those eyes. They were his. The adults were strangers. One man held the boy by the shoulder. The woman on the left had her hand open and flat at her side, like it was something she had learned to do when she could not think of what else to do with her hands. On the back, someone had written a date and a county 3 states away. Noah turned the wooden box in his palm. It was warm. It should not have been. He opened it and found a key. Not the kind that opened a door. The kind that sits in a pocket and changes the person who carries it. He understood it without words. His throat burned. He put the key back in the box and then into his pocket. He would not show Lark or Pip. Not yet. Not because he did not trust them. Because some pieces of yourself take a minute to learn the shape of. "What does the paper say?" Lark asked. The wax seal came free under Noah's thumb. The top sheet was Mirelda's gentle print. She had written him a letter and tucked it down inside a bridge where he would find it only if he followed a drawn line with his finger and believed clay could be hotter than summer. She explained a thing no one had ever explained. She wrote about a man and a woman who had signed papers they did not understand because a doctor with kind eyes and a heavier pen had told them their son could be made well. She wrote about money that looked like rescue. She wrote about a program disguised as charity. She wrote about how she had found Noah on the steps of a church with a blanket and a photograph and a paper with a number that no longer connected to anything. She wrote that sometimes love is not enough to lift the kind of weight other people tie to you. She wrote that love still tries. Noah's vision blurred. He wiped his eyes with the back of his wrist. He read on. The second sheet was written in a tight hand he did not know. There were directions to a house in town with a green door. Instructions to knock 3 times and ask for a name that belonged in history books. Not in a coal town. Beneath that, in that same impatient script he had seen in the book, was a warning. The man in the suit is not what he seems. He wears people the way crows wear wind. If he comes to you, give him nothing but your good morning. He carries debt in his pocket like a length of chain. Pip straightened and looked up. He was not listening to Noah. He was listening to the road. The hum across the bridge had changed. It had broken into pieces. A car had eased off the shoulder. A door opened. Feet on gravel. Careful and measured. Noah did not need to conceal himself to know how to disappear. He slid the papers back into the tin with less sound than thought and eased the book into his pack. The man in the suit leaned against the rail 10 feet away like he had been there all along. As if the woods had kept him in their pocket and decided now would be a funny time to hand him back. He was not large or small. He was the kind of man eyes slip off of. He smiled like an apology and fostered that smile into a greeting. "Morning," he said. His voice had the weight of someone who had come a long way and did not intend to leave without his reason. "Hot already?" "No hotter than yesterday," Lark said. and put herself a half step between him and Noah without making a show of it. "You must be Lark," the man said, which was the wrong first thing to say to a girl who changed names as an act of mercy on herself. "You run fast." Lark did not reply. Pip slid into sight on Noah's other side like a shadow deciding to practice being human. He had a small piece of broken concrete in his palm, and Noah did not have to look to know his fingers had already learned the weight of it. "You are far from home," the man said to Noah, and there was kindness in it. Real or practiced? Noah could not tell. "Home is whichever way my feet are pointed," Noah said. "Who taught you to talk like that?" "Someone who knew how to make a sentence land on its feet." The man laughed. He did it without his eyes. "I am looking for a book that belongs to me." Noah did not move. That is the problem with books. They belong to whoever needs them most. "Do not put your hand on the rail," Lark said, and it sounded like advice rather than a threat, which made it land twice as hard. "It is a bad year for hornets." The man removed his fingers from the rail as if something had stung him. "I do not want to hurt anyone." He flicked his eyes toward Pip and then back to Noah, which meant he had read them in the right order and would not stop. "I am a friend to families. A boy gets lost. A man like me points him home." "You are not a map," Noah said. "No," the man said. "I am the one who knows where maps are hidden." He meant the book. He could not say it out loud. The sheriff's car rolled past on the far end of the bridge with someone else at the wheel. Noah let the sound pass in a ribbon. He felt the key in his pocket like a small sun. He wondered if the man could see heat through cloth. "What happens if I give you the book?" Noah said. He did not mean to say it. His mouth wanted to know where the lie was. "You will have a good breakfast," the man said, with someone who knows your name as if they were born to say it. "Who?" Noah asked, and the word was a cut. He had not known how much he wanted to say it until he did. The man smiled the way cats do when someone opens a cage for them. "Son," he said, and let the word hang heavy. "I can take you to them." He might have believed him if not for that word. He was not that man's son. He was Mirelda's boy, and he was Lark's safe bet. And he was the thing Pip did not want to open. He was also something else entirely that had a name no one had said out loud yet. He had a key in his pocket to rooms he did not understand. He took a breath and tasted the river and the dust off the truck tires and the faint oil in the bridge rails. "I will meet them on my own feet," he said. The man's smile hardened until it was not a smile at all. He took one step closer. Lark stepped the same number in the other direction and brushed her palm along the rail. The metal under her hand bloomed a frost of orange powder. The hornets under the rail noticed. Pip flicked the piece of concrete in his hand without looking. It hit the man in the knuckle. He did not flinch. He reached into his jacket pocket. Noah shifted his weight and knew the exact shape and arc of the river below. If the man pulled a weapon, he would go over the side. Noah did not like that he knew this. He loved that he knew this. "Careful," the man said, and pulled out nothing more than a folded piece of paper. He let it unfurl. It was a photograph. Two people stood in a kitchen. A woman with hair the color of fresh tobacco and a man with the worn, watchful face of somebody who fixed machines by listening to them. Between them, a gap on the floor where a small body should have been. The woman had her hand open at her side. Noah's breath stopped. The man saw it. His smile returned. Warmer. "I am not your enemy. Let me help." Noah had learned a thing in the hollow without noticing it. People tell you who they are by what they reach for when they are afraid. He did not think the man was afraid of him. He thought the man was afraid of a book he could not read. He thought the man was afraid of a world without the chain he carried. "I will ask you one question," Noah said, and his voice came out steady. "If you answer, you walk away. If you do not, you will not like what happens next." The man tilted his head as if amused. "Ask." "When you set Deputy Harper to sleep, did you dream anything?" The man's eyes narrowed just enough to tell Noah he had guessed right. Lark and Pip did not shift, but he felt them both tighten. The man in the suit had not expected anyone to notice the deputy's nap. "People nap," he said. "You counted to 3 with your fingers." Noah said, "You will count to none now." The man glanced at the bridge rail as if gauging whether he could get a hand on it before Lark powdered it under her touch. He looked at the distance to the car. Pip put his back to the abutment like a creature that climbs to fly. The man saw the angle and the arc. He hesitated, which is how people lose their balance long before they fall. You do not want to be what you are, the man said to Noah, and there was something almost tender under the mockery. That is the root of it. If you put the book in my hands, I can take that root out and burn it. You do not know what I am, Noah said. You just know the word key. The man's mouth tightened. It was enough. Lark laid her palm flat against the rail, and rust raced along the length of steel with a sound like an animal exhaling. The hornets boiled out. Pip moved so fast the air forgot to resist him. He was a streak of boy in the corner of the man's eye. And then he was not. The man jerked back. His heels slid on gravel. For an instant, Noah saw himself grabbing the man by the wrist. For an instant, he did not move at all. The man windmilled for purchase and found none. When he fell, he did not scream. He hit the slope hard and rolled into the river's shallow edge with a splash and a grunt. Noah backed away from the rail with the book and the tin. Lark grabbed his sleeve. Pip's eyes were wide, not with victory, but with the stark practical question of whether the man would drown. He would not. He floundered upright, wet to the chest, one sleeve torn, and stared up through dripping hair with a look Noah had seen on stray dogs. The look that says, I will remember you. Go, Noah said. They ran the ridge back the way they had come. They did not speak until the road hum dissolved into birdsong. Then they did not speak because that was easier than saying what was true. Part 3. The house with the green door sat at the end of a street where the paint on porches peeled in long curls and kids rode bikes tight circles in cracked asphalt. A woman opened the door before Noah knocked the third time. She was small and barrel-chested the way women get when they have learned to carry their own weight and someone else's too. Her hair was gray where it had not been bothered with dye. Her eyes were the color of storm water. You took your time, she said, and then laughed when his face must have given him away. I am joking. Come in. Close it behind you. We will not be seeing that man for a while. I sent a call. He got himself wet. Men like him pretzel up when they are cold. Her name was Edda Kline. She lived alone, but never ate supper by herself. People came and went through the afternoon like tides. Consultants of a kind nobody hired on paper. She listened to their stories and told them which parts mattered. She poured Noah coffee he did not drink and set a plate of cornbread on the table and looked at the book as if it might jump. Do not open it in here, she said. We will be talking into next month. Then tell me this, Noah said, and put the wooden box on the table but did not open it. Am I stolen? Edda did not look surprised. Yes, she said, like an apple in a jacket pocket. Quiet and quick. It is not always men in suits who take things. Sometimes it is people in lab coats. Sometimes it is someone with a cross. Sometimes it is a neighbor who plates a casserole and carries away a whole person while everyone says what good hands they are in. Do my people want me? Noah asked. Edda sat back. Want is a small word for a big ache. She said, your people have never stopped. But wanting is not the same as knowing. Wanting cannot tear a door off its hinges unless it knows where the door is. Mirelda tried to give them a hinge to find. She kept you alive until you could do the lifting yourself. How do I find them? Noah asked. Edda slid a small book from under the table like a magician producing a dove. Telephone numbers. Scribbled notes. A map of counties. Names of people who answered late at night. She put a finger on one line. You will call this number. You will tell the person who answers that you are what you are. They will come meet you under a porch light, and they will bring extra chairs. If you are ready for that, wait. If you are not, you will tuck that number somewhere warm, and you will wait until your knees know how to hold what happens when the door opens. Noah tucked the number in his wallet behind the photograph of the pharmacy. His hand shook. He could not help it. Lark was quiet in a way that meant she was paying attention to something inside her. Pip sat in a chair that he had built for himself by not moving until it became true. What about him? Lark asked, meaning the man in the suit. He is a debt collector, Edda said. Not the kind that calls your house at dinner. The old kind. He works for a church with no windows. When he looks at you, he sees a ledger. When he looks at Noah, he sees a signature line. The only way to make a man like that lose is to pay him with something he cannot use. What is that? Pip asked. The first words he had offered since the bridge. Truth, Edda said. And people. He cannot hold either. They run through his hands like water. The man in the suit did not come that afternoon. He did not come that evening. Edda kept them overnight and had a neighbor sit out front stringing beans on the porch with a shotgun she held like an old friend. The next morning Edda said it was time to go home. We do not have one. Lark said. You do now? Edda said. There is a farmhouse on the east side of town that has been sitting empty with its windows not empty at all. Someone fills them with curtains. Someone cleans it on Thursdays. Nobody claims it on paper. It was kept for a reason that is past. You three can claim it now. If the sheriff asks, you will say you are renting. If he asks who owns it, you will look polite and say you forgot the name. He will go home and tell his wife his mind is gone. Men like that do not pry when they do not have to. They found the farmhouse just as she had described. Sunflower heads nodded along the fence line. A black snake had left a shed skin half under the porch steps, and the sight of it made Noah feel lucky. The house smelled clean and a little lonely, like a place that had always expected company. The kitchen table had 4 chairs. Lark claimed the back bedroom that held the afternoon light like a secret. Pip chose the little room off the kitchen where the floor felt closest to the ground. Noah took the room with the view of the field. He set the book on the dresser and did not open it. He called the number that night when the sun was not quite gone. A woman answered on the first ring and said his name. Not Calder. The other one. The true one he did not remember learning and had not told anyone. He sat on the kitchen floor with the phone against his ear and listened to a shape forming in the air. He did not write anything down. He did not need to. When he hung up, he did not cry. He picked up the wooden box, took the key in his hand, and walked out to the porch where Lark sat with a pencil tucked behind her ear and Pip dozed with his feet under his chair like a cat. He set the key on the railing. I thought about putting it back in the bridge, he said, or burying it. But it is not that kind of key. What kind is it? Lark asked. The kind that only turns once, Noah said, and I already turned it when I chose to keep it. Lark touched his arm. What now? Now we cook something that smells like supper, Noah said, and when people knock on the door we will decide which ones to invite in. They made beets and beans and cornbread because those were the things their hands knew without a list. They ate until their bellies were warm. They went to bed and slept the kind of sleep you get only when you are under a roof that does not belong to someone who can call you a guest in the morning with a smile that hurts. The man in the suit came at noon the next day. He did not step onto the porch. He stood in the yard by the mailbox and watched the house with his head cocked like he heard music in it. You have something that belongs to me, he called. Noah stood in the doorway and let the screen door hang open so the smell of onions and fatback moved past him like a friendly dog. He did not bring the book into the sunlight. He did not bring the key. He carried only his voice. I do not have anything of yours, he said. That is the last time I will answer you. You cannot shut me out, the man said. Watch me, Noah said, and shut the door. The man did not move for a long time. Then he laughed once without sound and walked back to the road with his hands in his pockets like he had all the time in the world. Maybe he did. Noah did not care. He had a number now. He had a house. He had people who would sit at his table and talk about their days. He had a book he would open only when opening it meant giving someone else a map and not another chain. Weeks turned into a pattern. Someone came to the porch every afternoon with a story. A woman whose son was kept behind a locked gate in a church basement while men prayed the air thinner. A miner whose cousin had signed papers to get his daughter a scholarship. And then the girl had been driven out of town in a black car that took everything she knew how to look at and made it strange. Edda sent them, and Noah listened. Lark listened and took notes in a little book of her own. Pip listened, and sometimes after dark Noah saw him perched on the fence post like a small night thing, keeping watch for owls. They did not burn the book. They did not worship it either. They used it. They wrote in it. They tucked new envelopes into its spine with names written in a dozen hands. They crossed out old names not because those people were gone, but because they were home. The day Noah's parents walked up the drive, they looked smaller than they had in the photograph. Years had rubbed them down to the truth of their faces. The woman's hand was still open at her side. When she saw Noah, she closed it. Not because she was hiding anything, but because she had found what she was missing. No one said any of the things people say in movies when people find each other. They sat at the kitchen table with their elbows on the wood like they had done it yesterday. Noah did not show them the key. He did not have to. Some things you keep because keeping them is not a secret. It is a promise. He learned the story in pieces. There had been a doctor. There had been a church. There had been a man with a watch that made a smooth clicking sound when he flipped it open. There had been a signature. Grief swelled in the room and then settled where grief lives in a house that intends to go on living. Noah told them about Mirelda. He told them about the hollow. He told them about the bridge. He did not tell them where it was. Some doors belonged to the people who built them and no one else. That night they ate too much and went to bed early because there is no exhaustion like the kind that comes when your life suddenly fits. Lark sat on the steps with her notebook open, drawing a small church with a fire behind it and writing beside it. Not a confession this time, but a plan. Pip walked the fence line and watched for cars he knew the sound of. The man in the suit did not come back that week. Or the next. Edda came by with a sack of peaches and a favor to ask. A boy down in the next county over had been sleeping in a laundromat where no one would bother him. His aunt would take him if someone could help pry his hand out of the locked door of a social worker's office where the forms had multiplied until they were a kind of paper wall. Edda did not have the right words for that door. She thought maybe Lark did. They went in Noah's borrowed truck. Lark put her hand on the knob of an office door and said please. The knob decided to cooperate. Pip perched on the edge of a desk where he could see down both halls at once. Noah told a man in a tie that numbers did not scare him and watched the man remember being 9 years old and afraid of his own father. The boy came when Lark spoke his name and told him he had time to decide whether to keep it. They drove home with the windows down. The peaches Edda had left ripened on the counter until the kitchen smelled like summer. A week later, a letter came in a hand Noah did not recognize. It was from Deputy Wade Harper, whose wife had had her own reasons for bringing a pie to Edda's porch. Wade wrote that he owed them a thank you. He did not say for what. Men like Wade do not name their debts. He said the sheriff had less interest in the hollow than in other things now, and if he had to drive his patrol car out to the farm and sit in the shade sometimes to make that true, he would. Noah wrote back and said they would keep a chair under the oak. He signed his name, the old one and the new one, and did not feel like either belonged more than the other. They went together the way river and rock do. On the first day of fall, they opened the book on the kitchen table and wrote another set of directions under Eleanor Bridge. Not to a hollow place in a wall this time. To the farmhouse with the sunflowers where someone would feed you beets and cornbread and tell you the truth even when it hurt. They titled the page Home. Epilogue. The man in the suit did not vanish. People like him never do. He moved his attention 2 counties over and then 3. He found new ledgers. He found other bridges. Sometimes Noah thought he caught a glimpse of a dark figure standing across the road from the house at dusk, and he would feel the key heat in his pocket and then cool as if to say yes. I am here. And no, you do not have to touch me. If the man ever came back to the porch and said the word son, Noah would simply shut the door again. He had learned that doors are only as strong as the person who stands in them, and that he had become a strong door. In the winter, Lark called herself by a new last name she picked out of a book of poets. And then, for the first time, went back to the first one and kept it. Pip learned the sounds of fox paws and snow and did not wake Lark when the red dog ghosted past the window, because some things are meant to be witnessed by the night alone. Mirelda's grave in the hollow sprouted a small marker someone put there without permission that said only thank you. Noah did not ask who. He brought flowers before the first frost and set them down and did not pray. He spoke. He said, out loud, that the story had gone the way it needed to. That spring the river rose and pressed at the bridge. The clay disc turned once more on its own, and the hollow space filled with water and silt and small stones. The book had no need of the hiding place anymore. It lived on a shelf in a kitchen above a table, and was heavier with every envelope tucked under its spine and lighter with every name crossed out because someone was home. When Noah opened the door now, people stood there with their hands open at their sides. He invited them in. He sat them at the table. He told them what Edda had told him. Truth and people are the only two coins that buy your way out of certain kinds of rooms. He handed them each a folded piece of paper with a number on it and watched as rooms he could not see opened down the road. He was not a map. He was the point on a page where 3 lines meet and someone writes the name of a town. He was a boy with a key in his pocket and a bridge behind him and a house full of chairs. He was a son, not in the mouth of a man who carried debt like a chain, but in the kitchen where supper made the air a soft thing and people knocked on the door and came in without waiting because that was the kind of place it had become. That was enough. It had to be. It was more than he had thought he would ever get. The end. If this story stirred something in you, share your thoughts in the comments. Where do you stand on violence used to resist those who exploit others? And on the injustices we allow to grow when we look away? Say what you believe. Tell us why. Your voice is part of the reckoning.